Welcome back to Art Practice ASMR. This is my recap video for week 4 of Inktober 2019. In this video, I'm showing you the drawing and inking process of all of the art I've done this past week. And as always, you can find the finished high-resolution versions of all of these drawings on my social media, which can be found through the links below. This week, I've decided to talk about all of my favorite Halloween memories. Recently, my mother took down a bunch of old Halloween decorations that I haven't seen in years. And I've just had all of these old childhood memories just rushing back to my mind. And so I felt like sharing all of this. As a kid, my favorite holiday was always Halloween, and I think it was a mix of a few reasons why. I always really liked dressing up. It was usually as my favorite superheroes. I know my favorite costumes as a kid were the times I went as Batman or Superman. And I think my all-time favorite was when I was the Blue Power Ranger. He was always the coolest. And apparently, according to my mother, I was the only kid she knew who was already making plans for what I was going to be wearing next year during that year's Halloween. So I was way into that whole costume element. But I was also really into all of that horror and paranormal and generally getting scared part of Halloween. When I was a kid, it seemed like a lot of my friends were really afraid of that kind of stuff. But not me. I don't know what my first exposure to that kind of thing was. I just feel like I've always been really into creepy things. It's something that's oddly, deeply nostalgic for me. You know, things with horror elements. I always loved when the shows would start showing all of their Halloween specials, because it was the only time that things would delve into the more morbid elements of things. When I was a kid, I loved watching the show Arthur, and I loved when they did those Halloween specials. Specifically the one where they couldn't figure out who was wearing a specific costume, and they find out that the person in the ghost costume was actually a real ghost. It was like a crazy twist, but it came out of nowhere. I feel like I'm rambling now with no idea where I'm going, so I'm going to try to bring it back to something. I was always really into the scary elements of Halloween as well. And it seems like nowadays, since social media is really prevalent, I've discovered a lot more people who are really into that kind of stuff too. And something I commonly see is people talking about debating their parents over what Halloween means to them. It's usually the kids saying that Halloween is supposed to be scary and gory, And then it's the parents, specifically mothers, saying that Halloween should be cutesy and pastel and, all fabric-y. And I feel like I'm one of the few people who was always into both elements of the holiday as a kid. I loved all of the horror movies that you could watch late night on TV. But I was also into going to places like Michael's and just seeing the tiny figurines that they had. I guess that might just be a side effect of always going with my mom to go shopping. But I don't know. I just always liked looking at those little figurines and going like, oh, there's a little Dracula or whatever. I actually haven't been to Michael's in a while. The last time I was there was last inktober when I bought my black and red ink. But I should go back again. I don't know what the point of that was. Oh, going back to decorations. My town is kind of Silent Hilly. It's a very old original town in the center of this sprawling city. But I live in the old part of town, the original part, and it's kind of the poor area in a more richer suburb, I guess. So it inherently has this kind of creepy Silent Hill aesthetic to it, especially when the fog rolls through. And the people around here used to absolutely love to put up these crazy, extravagant Halloween decorations. There's a house really close to mine that we would always walk to, where they just had these giant blow-up figures of different monsters. And then there were other houses that would compete with them. They would see who could build the most extravagant set piece on their lawn. And I don't know if anyone won, but I just always thought that those were fun to check out. Speaking of Halloween decorations, it feels like less and less people are putting up decorations now. When I was a little kid, every house on the block would be decorated. And when we would go trick-or-treating, we would hit every single house on the block. And then we would go for even more blocks and just, swipe up all the candy in each neighboring neighborhood. And sometimes there'd be one house that wasn't doing trick-or-treating. One house that didn't have candy. But, we would usually come out with a really good haul, and my plastic pumpkin would be filled to the brim, so much so that I couldn't carry it. But now it seems like less and less people are actually into Halloween. I mean, if you went by what people say on social media, then it's still the greatest holiday in the world. But very few people in my neighborhood are putting up decorations. My house is one of 3 on my street. And then the couple of houses that used to have the giant displays on their lawn aren't even doing it this year. Which honestly makes me really sad, because I'm pretty certain that the same families live in those homes. I just guess that they got really bummed out about, some sort of paradigm shift in the trick-or-treating world. I mean, it really does feel like there's some sort of meta game in trick-or-treating now. When I was a kid, it was me and all my neighbors just hitting every street in the block. But now, it feels like there's so many people not from my town coming into my town to trick-or-treat. For some context, I live in the really old Silent Hill area of town, but slowly there's more and more rich people moving in and building mansions here. And so that's kind of given us the reputation of being a rich town, but really it's just a poor town with a bunch of rich people in it. But since it has the reputation of being a rich town, a ton of inner city kids have their parents take them out here to go trick-or-treating. And almost all of the kids skip my house because it's so small, and they're like, oh, they probably don't have good candy. And then the kids who do visit my house whine the entire time because we don't have king-size candy bars. And, this is supposed to be a rich neighborhood. Why don't they have good candy? I feel like I'm becoming a crotchety old man who hates the youth, but I don't know. When I was a kid, I was just happy with getting free candy. And if I got one king-size candy bar, then that was insane. But now it's all these kids coming over here and being like, if you don't give me a king-size candy bar, I'm gonna egg your house. And it's like their parents coming over and being like, give my kid the good stuff. And it's like, come on, man. I don't know. It feels like people love to talk about how much they love Halloween, but when it comes to actually celebrating the holiday, nobody really does it anymore. They all turn off all the lights in their house, or they leave out a candy bowl, and then they go partying somewhere else. Nobody's actually doing it the way it used to be done. But I guess that's the old man segment of this video. So, hopefully I didn't make you too sad with all that sad stuff, but I'm gonna say if you like this video, then give it a like. If you want to see more, then subscribe. And if you want to get sad about how kids these days don't respect Halloween, leave a comment. Wow, I flubbed my words right there. Anyway.